Dr. Westfall, welcome to Eastlack, Westfall. There's a Karl Westfall in there, yeah. Thank you. That's a great way to start a relationship, isn't it?
Thank you, Jim Paul.
Yes.
Appreciate the.
Yes. What can I say? It's late. Welcome to Eastern New York, New England, to the Northeast District. Can you just share with the folks, let me just say this in the beginning. Dr. Eastlack pastored a church in Buffalo area, church called Eastern Hills, was there for over 20 years, a church that started with around 100 or less, and when he left, there were around 2,700 people that were in that church. Many, many people found Christ, and it was a great ride. He then moved to follow Joanne Lyon at World Hope, which was an impossible assignment to follow Dr. Lyon. He was there a few years and then came back to be district superintendent in Penn, Jersey. And he's been very successful wherever he's been. He and his wife, Anita, have been a ministry team, and she's now serving at headquarters alongside Dr. Schmidt. So you called and said, Paul, what about this merger thing? Maybe you could share with the folks, why did you pick up that telephone and what was going on in your mind as that happened?
So two things were happening simultaneously. One was that our district was in the middle of beginning a work in Manhattan, the first Wesleyan church that would be in Manhattan. And that got me thinking of, and it's been hard to try to do work in the city. It's never easy to do, and it's not easy in a way that other things aren't easy. It's different than the way other things aren't easy, if that makes sense. And as we were doing that, and it got me just thinking about cities, because in the Penn Jersey district we have cities of some size: Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area, and then all of New York City, all the way out to Long Island. So we have quite a bit of urban kind of territory, which then got me thinking about Boston. It was a friend of mine that talked about Boston, and one of our pastors has a daughter who lives in Boston, and she's been asking her daddy, can't you ever plant a church up here in Boston so that I can have a good church to go to? Well, all of those things were swirling in my head conversationally, and then I was standing around in a little group of maybe 4 or 5 of us DSs a few months ago when I overheard you say that you were thinking that this next year would be your last year serving as district superintendent here. Well, that just tagged right in my head, just tagged right along with the larger thinking about cities and Boston especially. So I called you. When I called you, it was just an exploratory phone call to say, has your district ever talked about or thought about what it would be to team up with another district and pull our resources together? And we're doing a halfway decent job in Eastern New York, but let's take New England for Christ. Let's see if we can get the Wesleyan Church to be granted the favor of the Lord enough to have a foothold in New England, as well as continuing the work here in Eastern New York. And so that's why I called, okay. And I wasn't surprised at your open-hearted response to my phone call that day.
Okay, very good. We've been praying for years that God would give us partners with capacity. That's been our prayer, and we thank the Lord for that. You guys need to know that I will be finishing next year my 17th year as district superintendent. They all haven't been here. I was district superintendent in Kansas for 7 years. And so, but this will be the second longest tenure of any district superintendent that you've ever had in the last 100 years, and I suppose on back. The other one that whose record I suspect will never be broken is a guy by the name of Charlie Dayton, who was Mr. ENYNE or Mr. Lake Champlain or Champlain District before that. Between his 2 stints, he served you for 26 years. And but other than that, this will be the longest. And so, Karl, you and I said, well, let's see what Dr. Schmidt has to say. Sure. That was a place to start. And what kind of reaction did we get there?
Well, he was very affirming of the thinking going into this. It seemed to jive with what he was sensing the Spirit was saying to the denomination at this time. So I think, and in my conversations with Wayne since then, he has sensed that this was almost an affirmation to him personally as the leader, that the Spirit is saying things out there the same that the Spirit's saying in his head.
Okay, very good. So you put together what we call a merger exploratory team, 5 people plus yourself, and I put together the same. On our side, it's Dean and Andrew and April and Wes and Dick. And we met with you in Poughkeepsie just a couple weeks ago. What was your folks' reaction? I'll tell you what our reaction was. Basically, the discussion in the van on the way back was, how often does Karl go to the dentist to keep that big white smile? That was pretty much what a smile to kill for. But what was going on in the van where you?
Now you're just flirting with me, Paul.
Yeah. Well, we got rid of our braces. We're good. So, what was the reaction from your folks as they went away from that meeting?
We had a 3-hour ride home together, and it was really wonderful. It actually inspired us to even just come back to our district just for this next year to talk about ways to engage our district. It became very exciting. It was an easy conversation to have with y'all.
Okay.
Within 10 minutes of being together, we sensed that that we felt like we were all on the same page together, both sides, and it was unusual for us, frankly.
Really?
We stepped away from that feeling that there was an unusual moment that didn't have to be worked on. In other words, there was no manipulation. We didn't have to try to create something like you and I didn't have to create. It seemed natural that there was an affinity toward one another and toward the vision that God was beginning to birth in all of us.
Okay.
So it was very exciting. The technical questions were there, just like I'm sure you all have, that the teams are going to be working out as we go forward. But those technical questions, that's all they were. Were just the technical. There were no obstacles.
Okay. So then you invited me to come to Penn, Jersey earlier this week, which has made for a busy week for both of us. Yeah. And I came down and sat through your meetings. And you laid out for the people some of the things that you and your BBA were thinking, maybe told the congregation or the audience far more than you intended to when you started. What prompted you to continue and to, what were you sensing?
Well, as I began my presentation, I was going to try to keep it as broad as I can, and then to inform them that we had the merger teams that were getting together to flesh out the details, and more would come later. But as I was talking, 2 things struck me. Number one, when might we have the opportunity to say more to the larger group? The next time that group would meet would be in a potential a conference, recalling back together the district conference, and then secondly, as I was talking, in general, the affirmation on the faces and the response and the amens were opening doors for me to even go further. Almost, I felt like, okay, let's test, and I would ask for questions. Anybody have any questions?
No.
And there weren't questions. And so I said, okay, well, let me bring up a couple, and I talked about, like, one thing that we talk about is where would the district center be? Another thing how would we manage such a large district geographically? And I just began, as I went down, it was almost like the conference was giving an open door to continue to hear more because of their affirmation. And then when we had Dr. Wood stand.
How many people were in the room as delegates that day?
We have about 280 delegates.
280 were in there, okay. And then Dr. Harry Wood, who is known by our people here, sort of the patriarch of your district, stood, and what was going through your mind?
Well, when Dr. Wood
you saw him
stands,
get up?
I never know which way he's going to go on a topic, and he doesn't use that. He has a lot of power in our district. He has a lot of emotional authority as the patriarch, as the elder of our district. And so when he stands up, my heart just skips a beat for a moment to wonder. And he stood up, and he asked for all of our metro delegates to stand, which would be Philadelphia and New York City metro delegates, if they would stand. And he talked about our district, and he said it was back when we did merger in 1968, we merged with the Pilgrim Holiness Church, that we had no people of color in our district. We had nobody. It was an all-white district. And 40% of our churches right now are ethnically non-white. And he just wanted us all to see how far we've come. And then he said that in his opinion, that this merger, if it's about an organizational merger, he doesn't want anything to do with it, he said. But if this is a missional merger to continue that kind of work in the Wesleyan Church, to move the ball down the field further, he said, then I'm all in. Let's go for this thing. And it was such an affirmation to both the conference as well as to the district superintendents. But I do want to comment first on your comments. I invited Paul. We didn't do a Q&A like this. I actually had him come up and just share. And I had no idea what he was going to say either.
Neither did I.
And he started with the bald baby joke. You all know that one? His story. Anyway, ask him to tell you sometime. But by the time he was done, he had people saying loudly, amen, hallelujah. There was an applause at the end of it. It was your district superintendent's heart talking to our hearts, way beyond an intellectual conversation. It went down into the heart because it went down to the motive of what would be behind this. And so I very much appreciated what you had to say in that.
What I heard Dr. Wood say that day was he sensed that this was all about reaching people and reaching a region.
Right.
It wasn't about X and O's. Right. Or where the office is going to be, or how, all of those things which are just incidental. But he sensed there was a heartbeat that you guys have and that we have as well. After, let's don't put you on the spot. That's not the way I normally operate. But after being here with us last night and today, your first exposure to ENYNE, just give us... if it's positive, would you tell us what you're thinking? I realize I opened myself and you up to it. What's your heart been saying, or what's going on?
Yeah. So, well, last night, first of all, I mean, ordination services are ordination services. They're pretty scripted by the discipline and things like that. But I enjoyed the warmth that you had one ordinand last night, Diane, and it was just a pleasure to see a whole district come around. And in my opinion, a woman, and to say to a woman, which says to women everywhere, you have a place in the Wesleyan Church. I was very proud of you last night to ordain a woman. Our district has worked very hard on that, and one of the things my DBA said when we talk about mergers, we don't want to go backwards on that. We have 12 churches in our district that are female-led, and we don't want to go backwards on that. And so we want to know, do you have that DNA in you or not? Well, you told me last night you did. That was very encouraging. And then today, I have to tell you that, Paul, you endured our business session, our day-long business session.
I made some friends back there, and we had a party.
Did you really? But it was, ours is a little more sterile than yours, so I have some things to learn from you today. I like the way you do your awards. We still do ours, kind of an old-fashioned plaques, and you know what I mean? So we have some things to learn. And also the storytelling that you've done through the day, your videos, gripped my heart. The couple with the house, I was just bawling like a baby in the back there. You know what I mean? Stories give context to numbers. And if it's just numbers, I mean, numbers are good, but you make people work harder to celebrate numbers if they have to imagine it themselves. Stories, and we don't do much of that. I'd like to do a little bit more of that. Next year, even beginning with our new district conference, I'd like to make sure that we build stories into our numbers.
Sure.
So thank you for that. It's been really good. And I have a lot of friends here. I have some folks that I've known for many, many years, and it's been a real blessing to be here today.
Sure. Now, one of the things that I've been very upfront with you and your people is that this goes forward. We don't intend to be swallowed up.
Right.
We believe we bring a lot to the table, including a name.
Yeah, right. I would have paid good money to get that name. So yeah.
And if you win the lottery today, then we'd be happy to talk to you about selling that name. But you know, we don't intend to be swallowed up. It would not be fair to my people, and yet you're the larger entity, and so we believe we'd have to change a lot to make this work. But we would want you to share that change pain. Do you think that's possible, or what's going on in your mind? I think our folks would love to hear that.
Yeah, and I think both of our districts, to be honest with you, Paul, I think both of our districts have, in the last, say, let's go 4 or 5, 6 years, we've both experienced some pretty nice momentum. And if we're not careful, a merger can be a disruptor of momentum if we're not careful. Or it can be a multiplier.
Yes.
And that's going to be a lot. It's going to fall on you and I,
Exactly.
on us and our DBAs to decide if we're going to let it become an inhibitor or kind of a speed bump or an encourager.
Sure.
And so with Penn Jersey District, there are two things that you bring that we do, and all districts do to some degree, but you do it and shine across the denomination. Your reputation across the denomination is on your leadership development that your district superintendent has brought to you, and several of you have told me that's an important element to how far your district has come.
Which we call Success University.
Success University, yes, or if we're what you call Success University.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Peabody. What is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
But the second thing, and that our district would like to continue to learn from you, is not only in the development of your leaders, but the way that you revitalize your churches. And again, it's very district superintendent related. It's encompassed in this man that God has given him a passion and then a discovering on how to get at the issues when it comes to revitalizing churches. If a church is going to close, it's already made its decision to close. Might take 5 years to get there, but and as your district superintendent is fond of saying too, we don't close churches. Churches close by themselves. We just do the funeral service, but they decided oftentimes 4, 5, 10 years ago, and you can chart it back. Your district knows how to look at revitalizing work in a way that our district does not. I need to learn, and I have a year left now to quick learn it from your brother here to help me understand what that would mean for the district, and to possibly ask for his help going forward.
And Karl, we have streamlined things here almost to a fault. We've taken camps and children's camps and youth camps and women's ministries and all of these things and have put them to the side to focus on revitalization and leadership development. But there are things that you have in place as a larger district that would be, well, if we merged, it would be ours, would they not?
Absolutely.
And tell us a little bit. And let me tell you, I get pretty excited when I think about Peter, Isaac, and his church over there. For years, they've existed as the Caribbean church,
Right.
With just one. I think it'd be so fun for them, and I could get really excited if they'd be in the same place with Anthony Graham and all of that crowd out of New York City. Don't you see how powerful that could be?
We have 10 Caribbean churches in our district, so that would give them
You want to witness
a family
to it?
to feel. Anthony Graham and others, that'd be wonderful.
And likewise, you have quite a few Hispanic churches, and we're just beginning to get into that.
We
But
do. And we have a director of Spanish ministries, Patricio Lebay, who would love to assist. I've already spoken with him. He would love to offer his services. We actually have 2 churches in New York. 2 of our Spanish churches are up more new. I'm not sure how that happened, why you
we
don't
wanted
have
to
them.
speak to you about that while you were here.
That was before my time,
Yeah.
but I think we snuck in somehow
Yeah.
on New York there.
All right. Now,
But I wanted to comment about camps and
Yeah,
and
tell us a little
programming.
bit about what programming
So we
you have.
own no campgrounds either, and I want to tell you that other districts that have merged, you need to thank God every day that neither of us have camps to have to deal with. That has been a burden. I know it was a burden to you when you got rid of it, and I know it was difficult and strained relationships. Imagine trying to merge 2 districts under those needs. We don't own any campgrounds. We rent if we need something, we rent it. And so we do have a youth camp. We have about 400 students that come to it right now every year. It's at Tuscarora Inn along the Delaware River where northern Pennsylvania and northern New Jersey come together. And we do have accommodations that can bring in more from your district in something like that.
okay.
We do a children's camp right now. It's on the far western edge of our district. I don't know that would work very well. We had to rethink that strategy. We have about 120 or so. We have a Spanish weekend retreat every year in August. For our Spanish churches, we have about 180 people that come to that. It's a Friday night and Saturday night. And then once a year, we have something that before I came as DS, it was called CLAM. Some of you have heard that. It was a Christian Life and Ministry Conference. It was called CLAM. I don't know. We kind of decided, let's rename the thing. And we renamed it and gave it a new mission. And we renamed it Excel. And it's our church health conference. We have about 1,000 people that attend last year was over 1,100. We had a record attendance. It's a one-day, Saturday conference that we do. It costs $25 and includes lunch, Chick-fil-A lunch. And we do it, and what it is, we have an opening and a closing rally, and then we have seminars on how to have a healthier church. We have one on healthier board meetings, how to have a healthy board meeting. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we do. We work on very technical things together. Now we do that in Allentown. We'd have to maybe rethink where that is located. Right now, Allentown is the center of our district, so that's helpful to have something there. But
On that note, with that being so entrenched in the Allentown area, do you believe that the people in your area or your district would respond to moving that?
yes,
Because distance is in our minds.
yes,
Particularly those that are on the St. Lawrence
yeah.
and far north, and even way out in New England. Do you think that's
Yeah.
would be
No problem.
negotiable?
Location of things like that, even district conference. So we have it this year, but in the Allentown area. But up until there, most of the years I've been DS, we had it over in central Pennsylvania at the Milton campus.
Right.
And so we've moved it. Location is not what's important to
Okay.
us.
All right.
It's what happens there. So that's. And we have a pastors and spouses retreat every year. I know you do yours in the fall. We do ours in the winter time. Might have to rethink that for
And
those of you coming from
we're going to join them this
north.
year, January 24, 6, 7, and 8, I think it is, in Lancaster.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
So we'll come together with, you said, a couple hundred of your pastors and spouses, or 250?
We have about 180 that come.
180 with our 70 or 80. That'll
Be marvelous.
we're looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Isaac Smith, the district superintendent. And here's a little bit of a strategic thing. Isaac Smith, who is the DS out in the Northwest district, which is one of those areas that Wayne talked about today as a pilot. We've asked Isaac Smith if he would come in to be our presenter this year at our Pastors and Spouses Retreat, and he's agreed to do that. He cleared his calendar for us to come in and help us in this process.
And you do it on a Friday night, Saturday, and up through noon Sunday because
Crazy.
of bivocational and inner-city people who cannot get there through the week. Is that correct?
Yep. One of the DNA matters that, and I'll be frank with you all. One of the things that my district was asking me after district conference is that we're pretty far down the road on certain things that we consider deep DNA work. One is that we've come a long way at intentional diversity. We make sure that our DBA, we make sure that all of our committees, we make sure that anybody on platforms at district events, that we have complete diversity, that we represent the entire district. Hispanic worship bands, they're the most fun of all the worship teams that we have get up there. Caribbean worship teams, and Anglo, it's really marvelous to do. They just want to know that they don't want to go backward on that either. And so one of the things we've had to do, and it's been difficult to do because once a year, our entire district pulpits empty out of their normal preaching pastors because we have our retreat on a Sunday morning. And that's been difficult, but the reason we do it on the weekends is because almost 50% of our district are bivocational people. All of our district, all of our urban pastors, all of them are bivocational. I don't have one that's not bivocational. In fact, for those of you that come from other countries, Guyana and different parts of Africa and Central and in the Caribbean area, it's the usual that you're going to be bivocational. In fact, it's by choice. They want to keep one foot in the world in which they pastor. They don't want to just be completely. Dr. Graham has a congregation in Brooklyn of 900 people. He is also the principal of one of the public schools in Queens, New York, and he's been doing that for 30-some years. This man, he's bivocational. It's just built into their DNA. Well, we wanted to honor that and by making sure that we didn't cut them out of our pastors' retreats.
Sure. So programming would just be a matter of sitting down and
Just working it out.
working these things out. It's not anything we would any hills we would die on. other than to try to make it accessible for all that we could, okay? Now, going forward, the next couple of steps that we plan to take are to continue to meet with the exploratory teams. There's a meeting set up for July the 15th and one in August, if I remember correctly. And the way that this is beginning to flesh out is if those go well, at our September DBA meetings, which ours is around the 9th, and I think yours is about the same time, the DBAs would state their intention to go forward or not. Is that the way you understand it?
That's how I understand it, yeah.
And then following that, you and I would put together what we'd call vision tours, where we would go to various areas of each district to field questions and
Pastors and
lay
folks from any church could meet with
right.
us.
We'll try to do it in the evening so everybody can come. And by that time, we will have fleshed out frequently asked questions so that it can be on a sheet that people can read and try to answer those the best we possibly can. Is that the way you see throughout the next?
And that would take us then, the way I see it, up to our retreat in the end of January. So we'd have most of these, if not all of them, in between
then.
September and
Sure.
the end of January.
The way other districts that have done this, at that point, if things are still going on track, there would be a reconvening of both district conferences to deal with one issue. That would probably come in the March timeframe sometime, where we would come together, and it would be the people that are here. You would be the ones coming back, 'cause you are this conference. And you would come back on a day, and we would deal with that one issue.
The discipline allows a reconvening if you only have one issue. You can't have more than one piece of business in a reconvening conference.
It would be just to handle that particular issue, and then there would be a vote on that day.
Separate votes.
Separate votes.
Yeah.
You would vote, we would vote. If you voted to go forward and we voted not to, it'd be dead.
Nice.
It'd take both of us to go forward. But if that were,
two, baby.
if there was two, yes. Are you through?
Yeah. No, but go ahead.
How many would like for him to be through? If we both voted affirmative, then we would meet in sometime around this particular time.
Yeah, and ironically, we both have conference the same week in June.
Same week,
Yeah.
in the same building, but it would be a building big enough to house your district conference somewhere. No, that's
No,
the
that
other
would be
meeting.
March.
That's
That'd
the
be
other
in
meeting.
March. The idea from one of the other districts that we learned was that for the voting in March, we would come to a same building together, but in different wings of the building, have our district conferences meet. And then we would come back together to announce how the vote went.
Yeah.
Little
Maybe-
dramatic, little fun, little,
Maybe have a
suspension,
worship
yeah.
time together or something.
Yes, very much so.
Okay. And then we would come together then in the June meeting together as one district, and we would elect a district superintendent. Now, he hasn't told you, but he understands I'm not available. I've announced that. He has announced that he would be available, but it's not a slam dunk.
No, it's not. No, I'm not assuming that I would be
Yes.
the district
The
superintendent.
DBAs of each one would come together, decide who they were going to interview or what they were going to do, and coming out of that would have a name that they suggested to the conference. And then we would elect that district leader at that particular time, and then begin the process of moving forward from that day on as the Northeast
Well,
District.
then that would be the second decision at merging conference. The two would be who's our DS and what's our name going to be. And so we would then decide together,
Yeah,
and I fully assume it would be.
it would be the Northeast District. I mean, you and I have already decided
We
that,
have,
right?
yes. Yes.
One of those meetings in the smoke-filled back room, right? So that is sort of the timetable. There's a lot of things that would have to be, but if we keep our eye on the reason,
Absolutely.
and that is to reach more people for Jesus Christ, the mission, then a lot of these other things don't matter. And, I think that this would allow us to feel part of something far larger than we are, and it could energize us. Because, folks, quite frankly, with the DTP and all these other things, we have been in a trajectory, but we're beginning to flatten out again. And we need another intervention to jumpstart us into another life cycle. You guys, are you sensing that? You can just sense. And we've got to get into another life cycle, because you can go from a dream to the top of the life cycle in 7 years, they teach us. And we're about there. And I don't want us to start down the backside of that life cycle.
You know, Paul, I have to say that Thursday at our district conference, after Dr. Woods sat down, and there was great applause, a lot of affirmation, my district secretary leaned over in my ear and said, call for a vote right now. Call for a vote right now. I have to tell you that since then, the emails and the texts that I've been getting since district conference, I would have had a unanimous vote. Without even the merger teams, without even all that frequently asked questions stuff, they captured the big picture. And your district's the same thing. I've sensed it last night and today. You are we're tired of just being numbers oriented and boundaries and let's just go along to get along. But there's an urgency that's in our general superintendent too, and that's what you and I are responding to. There's a sense of urgency in our denomination right now. And we have two choices, is my opinion, Paul. We have two choices right now as districts. We can either, especially when you think of New England, we could either punt the ball down to the next generation, like we've been doing for decades now.
Right.
Or why not us now? Why not this generation stand up and do this? Yeah. So that's the excitement that you and I both feel. So
that's great. Now, your district is a little more formal than our district. I think you picked up on that.
I did.
I have done my best to whip them into shape formality-wise, but they resist.
Let me give an example of that, even the way that and this is very good, and I like what you're doing here, even with these tables. We still use those of you that go to general conference, we still use the big table and the big wigs sit up on the front and face you and things like that. A lot of conferences still do that. I just got a picture this afternoon. The Central New York's meeting right now too, and they do the big table up front and everything. You do chat tables here, and it's much more informal. I like that. I'd like to incorporate that into district conference.
We wouldn't tell him this is our first year doing that.
Oh, is it? Well, good job. I like it.
Oh, we're experimenting. We made that decision this morning. But because you're more paper-oriented than we are in all of the process, somebody put forth a document just before you left that which I find rather comical, that they needed to put it into writing, that they were going to pray for Dr. Smith and pray for you during the next year. That, why don't they just pray instead of putting it on paper?
I inherited this from previous administrations.
Yeah.
It was you turn to the district secretary, he makes a motion, and we all have to vote that we will pray for and support the general superintendent this next year, and pray for and support the district superintendent. They have to actually vote on that thing. Yeah. So anyway, I've always found that to be awkward and really?
Yeah,
Anyway.
I was gone by that time, or I would have voted against it. But something unusual happened this time as that was being put forward. According to what Dr. Smith told me, someone stood and said, let's include Paul James.
Thank you, yes.
You can tell you were really into praying for me. I can tell.
I might have already left by then in my mind. I don't know. It was at the end of district conference.
What happened today? I mean, just somebody stood and included us?
I'll write it down for you.
Would you put it in motion for him, please? I'd appreciate it. There was a sense at the end that our prayers to conclude and the benediction that was to be given by one of our Haitian pastors, that let's begin now. Let's not wait till next year to pray for the new family, as we were sensing the Spirit leading us that there's a marriage coming, and we're going to merge two families together.
No.
And it's going to be but wasn't Wayne profound today? Isn't that profound about the concept about trust over tension? Tension is going to happen, but the only way it's going to be good is if you have trust that's bigger than the tension.
Yeah.
And so the unity of the prayer at the end was over the trust factor
Right.
and the merging together.
Right. Well, Dr. Smith was very taken with that. Very good. Well, we could talk about this a lot more, but that's pretty much what you and I know up until this point, and I want our folks to understand that we're going forward with this plan in place and see where it goes. But I sense from you folks that this is an idea whose time has come, and you're feeling really, really good. And so why don't you just give any, I sense that your brain is beginning to shut down. So before it does totally, would you just give them some closing words of exhortation or love or whatever it is that...
Yeah, let me close by telling you how our district conference opened. Paul was there Wednesday night. We have a banquet, and we don't do our ordination service at district. We do it in September, so that's another little thing we'll have to work out. But we begin with a banquet, so it's something about table fellowship is nice when you come back together again. And then we have an evening worship service and a message. When we moved into the larger room for the worship service, the worship team that we had selected this year was from our Trinity Wesleyan Church in Allentown. Not quite sure what happened. I've had a couple days now to really think about what hit us. Help me with the song, some of you worship folks, about the name of Jesus. And you have no rivals, you have no equals, you have that song. Something happened during that song, and the Holy Spirit just fell. There were about close to 400 of us with delegates and guests. Something happened. As they were wrapping up the song, God told me, we're not done yet. And I ran up to the edge of the platform, and I kind of got the eye of the leader. I said, do it again. We went back again, and it was just a profound moment of the Holy Spirit. And I wasn't quite sure what to do next when we were done the song, and you've had those moments. They don't come enough, do they? But when they come, you're really hypersensitive to maybe what the Holy Spirit is doing in the moment. That's how we began our district time together. We knew there was something bigger than us being said to us, and we felt that night that it was the Holy Spirit saying, pay attention. Pay attention. I'm about to do something. Just pay attention to me. So he had to kind of invade our worship in that night. And I just want to say that to encourage you also. I'm not trying to manipulate or emotionalize this moment, but there's only a few times in a life cycle do you have this moment where it's such a God moment that I fear that if it's not of God, we're about to make a horrible mistake. But if it's of God, and if we miss it, we're about to make a horrible mistake. So I live with that. It's a burden on me as the district superintendent right now for my district. It's a real burden that we need to hear from the Lord on this. And I appreciate the spirit in which your district superintendent has been speaking. There's just a wide openness with the heart of your districts and your merger team. It was really a wide open heart conversation. And I know you've had conversations in the past with other districts about what this might look like, or if you ever did something or whatever, and you just never felt the timing was right or something was off there. And we have just not sensed that. So that's the spirit in which I represent my district to you today. We already love you. The prayer that we did at the end was already a prayer of love and inclusion for all of you. And if the Lord doesn't want it, shut it down, Father. Shut it down. And we're happy to obey him, because it'll be a colossal mistake. But if the Lord's in it, I just can't stand the thought that we would miss it if the Lord is in it. So that's why I leave with you today.
And we don't know where he's taking this. Monday.
You're really going pretty far.
I'm going pretty far. Monday, we sit down at the Albany Airport with another district superintendent of the Northeast who has a large population base and has told me in private, I don't care if anybody knows, that we might be interested in getting into this action.
Go figure.
So we don't know what God's up to. but it's bigger than us, bigger than us.
And size doesn't intimidate me, and I know it doesn't intimidate you, Paul. Because God scales you up for whatever size. He does the economy of scale. He just does that. But to me, it's missional, and that I just can hardly. I go to bed at night and I can hardly fall asleep. I'm so excited about what this could mean for the lost people in New England. And you know, by the way, there were some comments earlier about, I think Wayne mentioned about the hard soil of New England. I hate to disagree with him, but he left, right? Okay.
But it is live streamed, and he'll watch it
Larry,
again.
you're not recording this anymore. Thank you. I saw him over there recording this. I think Wayne's a little wrong in that. The topsoil is hard. But you go one conversation deeper from the topsoil, they're as soft and hungry for God. They just don't have anybody showing them how to get there. And the Wesleyan Church is uniquely made right now for New England because they care deeply about how to treat one another, how to love one another, how to care for communities. That's a big ticket item in New England. People love that part. And so evangelicals who want to win souls is one thing, but an evangelical church who wants to bless their community with the goodness of life now, that's what's going to talk to the heart of New England. And so I think we're poised for that. And,
Good word. And Gretchen, this week, again, a God thing, and you guys all need to pray for this. I'll be meeting one of those apostolic, prophetic, evangelistic individuals who could be the point of the spear in Boston. And on Tuesday, I'll be taking him to the top of the city, and we'll be looking over Fenway Park, the finish line of the Boston Marathon, the Boston Commons, Boston Harbor, and all of those places, MIT, Charles River, Harvard, all of those places. And I'm just praying if God wants to do something special in his heart, it would be another one of those God things. And I could position myself to back out of this thing next June, knowing that I'd participate in a miracle. And this district was poised to make an impact like never, ever before. And these are good people, Karl. You found that. These are good people. Good people.
you know, you can't hear it. Paul and I can hear it a little bit. Behind us, there are some monitors, and the guys back there in the sound booth. I don't even know if you know we can hear it, but just in the general background, what a wonderful name it is. The name they're playing. You have no rival. They're just playing that right now while we were
That's the song,
up here talking. That's the song I was referring to
sure
earlier.
Andy and these guys will be ready to close with that. I could see them get up on the edge of their seat while I go. But we do have a few more business items to take care of. Give Karl a hand and thank him for coming.